Hey all, Bynx here, and welcome to Bynx Bants, the weekly show where we talk about everything Marvel Snap, starting as always with our featured section, 10 cards that have gotten major glow-ups. There are a lot of balance changes that happen pretty much every other week in Marvel Snap that adjust cards' stats a little bit up and down to keep the metagame safe. But there have been times where cards have needed like either a full redesign or a small tweak to how their powers work to really make them fit in with Marvel Snap. So I went through all of the cards in the game and really tried to pick out 10 really good examples of ways that they've tweaked or adjusted cards that are, in my opinion, in a way that makes the game a lot better. Starting with number one, and this is going to be the first one that is only actually a stat change because I kind of just haven't thought about this in a while, but I really think that they like took this card off the edge from it being pretty much unplayable garbage to a card that's been played a lot, and that is OG Blue Marvel. So OG Blue Marvel was actually when you first started Marvel Snap in beta, there was like a small like season pass type thing that you would go through, and Blue Marvel was one of the cards that you would unlock. And he started as a 6/4. And man, this card was just really bad. It was so hard to use this as like your final card when you're only adjusting other lanes by like 2 to 4 power. Just felt really, really bad. And pretty early on, I think it was right at the end of beta, they did make the change to where it's been from ever since to 5/3, which I think is a really, really good spot for the card. I'm really happy they made this change because Blue Marvel is a really simply designed card that, early on players can play and quite understand its power level. But at a 6/4 was just like unplayable garbage really, really quickly, but moving it up to 5/3 was a fantastic change. This is the only one that's just stat changes, but this was like one of the ones as I was going through the list, I was like, oh my gosh, that card was a 6/4. That card would have been really, really terrible. So shout out to them for noticing that early and changing this card to a position where it's felt playable and good ever since. So shout out to them. Next up, we have OG Atuma. So Atuma, when it was released, was really not good. It was a 4/10 with the ability, if you have another card here at the end of your turn, destroy this. It was pretty much exactly like Namor was, because Namor used to be a 4/5 that got +5 if it was the only card there, but this had some other things that you can do with it, but it was just terrible. Like anything like debris sending a rock over your way, or any goblins or anything like that would just destroy your 10 power card that you played out. There's very little amounts of testing with it and things like armor and, like Professor X you could play on top of it and stop it from going off. But when they really made this change to where it is now, where end of turn you destroy one of your other cards here with less power, even though it's not played very much right now, it was actually like immediately a really interesting card. It was actually one of the best decks in the meta right when this change happened. People were playing it with Nimrod and popping Nimrods and moving things around and using kind of like a destroyed Nimrod hybrid. Whereas most of the time now a destroy deck will go all in on Nimrod, trying to, use Shuri or Symbiote Spider-Man to make it really big. Just like popping a Nimrod a couple of times in the mid game, this allowed you to curve into it. So you could play the Atuma and then you would play the Nimrod underneath it. It would pop it and then you could destroy some other things and kind of go from there. So I really, really like this change. I mean, this card was practically unplayable and it moved it to a position where the card is actually like really interesting. Like you can sometimes use it as like defense against things like goblins and stuff like that. It just became a really, really unique card that has some niche use cases as opposed to just a piece of trash. Moving on, we have the original version of Negasonic Teenage Warhead. This card has actually changed a lot because it was originally a 3/4, then it was moved up to a 3/5. But the original ability was after any card is played here, destroy this card and that card. So Negasonic Teenage Warhead used to pop herself when she would get played on. And not only that, it wouldn't only affect your opponent. If you played this out and your opponent didn't pop it like immediately, they would just sit there and stare at it and be like, all right, play a card there, blow up your own card. Sure. There's a really, really interesting like use case for this card of like what the ideas for people had for this card was, but it was very, very clear that this card was just really bad. Kind of similar to Atuma, actually. It was sometimes like tested out early on with Nimrod, but it was just really, really not good. The downside was just way, way better than the upside. And now, of course, we have Negasonic Teenage Warhead at the 4/5. She is now, it says, after an enemy character is played here, destroy it once per game. They have to add the once per game because now it sticks around. And I do think that, like, the original thing that they changed it to, they originally changed it to a 3/2, and then they actually buffed it to a 3/3. It wasn't really that good back then. It was really things like Super Giant and like different ways to play the game that made this card feel so oppressive. But I think they've put it into a pretty good spot now. I think some people still really don't like Negasonic at 4/5, but I think at 4/5, there's enough like investment that you have to put into play the card to make it feel fair. And yeah, just a much, much better card than just destroying itself and being able to destroy your own cards. I really did not like this card when it came out. I like tried playing it a little bit once, but just really, really bad. Because like the biggest thing is like now if someone plays a Negasonic down and it doesn't get popped, like your opponent has to like play a small card there to take the Negasonic hit and then play a bigger card. Whereas you could just play a smaller card and then, you know, you'd play like a 1/1 and it would pop your opponent's 3/4 card that they played. And you just like end up neutral as opposed to your opponent having a card there. So really, really good change here. I know that this card has kind of been a little bit toxic at certain points. Definitely at a 3/3 was a little bit rough, but I think at a 4/5, they've really found a good spot for the card. Next up, we have the original Lady Deathstrike. This was another one I've kind of like erased from my memory, but when Lady Deathstrike was originally released, she was a 5/3 with the ability on reveal, destroy each card here with less power than this. So she would hit like 2 costs or less. And I guess the idea was to try and like buff her up to have her like completely take over a lane. But man, it just did not really work out too well. They actually buffed this up to a 5/4 to be able to hit 3-cost cards initially. And that gave her a little bit of play, but really it felt like the investment in buffing her up just wasn't worth it compared to the investment of buffing other cards up that can like spread that power, or something like Black Panther that can double that power. Like adding power to this just didn't feel great. And then like it would, even if you made it bigger, it would still kill your cards that were less than it. So it's like this weird back and forth. But changing it to the 5/7 that just destroyed all cards with 3 or less power, I think turned it into a really, really interesting tech card option. It's most often played in Destroy, but really like a cool tech card that you can use in certain metas when there's like a lot of cards that are 2/3s or maybe like some 3/3s that are really strong to be able to clean them up and fight against them. So I really, really like this change to Lady Deathstrike. Kind of like, it was like overcooked at first. It was like a cool idea, but then like when you're actually doing it in practice, the investment that you'd have to get to make the card bigger just absolutely wasn't worth it. So kind of get rid of that, give you more base power to give her a much, much higher floor, have it only do 3 or less power cards. I think this is a really, really good spot. And this card has felt pretty darn balanced ever since. It goes in and out of the meta as something that sees some play. Sometimes it's just like a meta swap to fight against certain things. Doom 2099 keeps getting stronger and stronger because they're like with Moonstone and Drax, the card actually feels a lot better. Maybe this will come back again as like a tech card against that, because this was a really, really good tech card to try and fight against Doom 2099 early on, especially if you could ramp it out early before they got their Doom bots too big. Moving on with the original Black Swan, and I really, really like this change because this was the team creating a new way to play or a new ability in Marvel Snap, which is Activate. And then they retroactively added it to some cards, which I thought was really cool. So the original Black Swan was a 3/5 that had the on reveal until the end of your next turn, your 1-cost cards cost 0. And they just made the real subtle change to change the on reveal to an Activate and take away a cost and a couple of power. And I just thought that this was great. You know, when they added that new type of card into the game, having like being able to like retroactively look back at cards that just didn't really hit the mark with what they had previously and adjusting them into a card that does see some play and is really interesting. It's a cool like little tool that you can have in a deck that has 1 cost. There's been a lot of different decks that have used this card, like Bounce or Morgan Le Fay decks can sometimes really like it. If you destroy a bunch of 1 cards, you have the Black Swan down, you can activate it, play Morgan Le Fay, and then play all those buffed up cards for free. So just a really, really good change, a really good example of the team seeing like an opportunity to take a card that wasn't really played, because the big problem with the original Black Swan was that like you had to play it on turn 5 like almost always, and then it would just really restrict what your deck could do. You have to play this 3/5 down on turn 5. You have to have plenty of 2 drops that can supplement it, because like you don't really want to play your 1 drops out while playing this card because they're going to be free next turn and you kind of want to burst down with them. So it was just a really, really weird spot, and this change to activate made it a card that's playable and really, really interesting for the game. Next up, we have Black Knight, and you might notice that this is the exact card Black Knight, a 1 energy 2 power. After you discard a card, add the Ebony Blade to your hand with that card's power once per game. The really big change that happened with Black Knight was to the Ebony Blade. The original Ebony Blade was a 4/0 that obviously gains power based on the card that was discarded, but it was just a vanilla card. It had the tagline, "The Black Blade Blazes." And this was back when Shang-Chi was just in so many decks, so it just kind of feel terrible to like discard a big card, you play out your Ebony Blade, and then your opponent just shangs it, and it just didn't really feel super good, I would say, overall. And what I really want to highlight is what I think they should bring back with the Ebony Blade, because it originally got changed to ongoing can't be destroyed and its power can't be reduced. So it had these 2 different ways of dealing with things. Now, what's interesting is that it says its power can't be reduced. That was originally to kind of fight it against Shadow King, but also it's really good against locations or affliction decks. But now Shadow King got changed to like overwrite things like this. Like even if something's power can't be reduced, Shadow King can still overwrite it, but it would still just buff up the power of the card against affliction or against locations that cause affliction to give you a little bit of extra power there. Black Knight has just felt pretty bad for a while. It's just a really, really hard archetype to make work. I really think that they should bring this back and give it a little bit of extra juice. Not only can't be destroyed, especially now that Shang isn't played nearly as much, but giving it a little bit more power. But this swap turned Black Knight from being a card that like people were testing out at first and then just like throwing in the trash, because it just felt so bad to make this big investment of playing a Black Knight early, getting a discard on a big card, playing it out to just be stopped by a single card. But stopping Shang was such a big thing for this, and it got a huge burst in popularity, and then eventually did have to get nerfed to get rid of its power not being able to be reduced. And again, with Shadow King being changed, how it just like affects things, really, really love to see them go back to this to give it a little bit more power. Next up, we have the original Viper. This is one that a lot of people might not know. Viper is actually a 2/3 with the on reveal. One of your other cards here switches sides. So Viper was actually kind of landed in this weird spot where it was like, it kind of felt pretty bad to play uh, for both sides, because if you're playing Viper, anytime there's multiple cards in there and you're trying to target one, it would just be like just an absolute crapshoot of what you'd end up hitting. So like later on in the game, Viper got really bad if you're not just playing out like a Hood into a Viper. And then there's like really nasty combos that you can do. Like on turn 3, you could play Ebony Maw and Viper on the same turn. Or like, I think the original reason that they moved it up to 3 was because of the Havoc, not being able to play Havoc and then Viper, which was not like the best way to play, but just felt super restrictive and like annoying for your opponents. It was never like a super high win rate deck, but it just felt really bad. And then they moved it up to 3 costs and it kind of fell off, but then they made the change to have it target the lowest power card. And I think that was such a good change here. Give it its identity, like take back its power a little bit by making it a bit more of an investment to play, making it a 3 cost as opposed to a 2 cost, but you do always guarantee that you're going to hit that lowest power card. So like it kind of feels better from both sides, because your opponent can't do as many really kind of broken or annoying combos with it, but at the same time you're not like stuck in this position where if you're playing it and you draw it later in the game, that you can get like no value out of it, or it's a huge risk to end up playing it because you don't have your lanes set up for it. I really, really like this change. I think that it turned the card from something that was like maybe better and more toxic into like a little bit worse, but way less toxic. And it felt better for both sides. And I think that changes to cards that feel better while you're playing it and feel better when you're playing against it are some of the best changes that you can make in this game. Next up, we have one of my favorite cards of all time, Galactus. I think a lot of people have seen like a lot of YouTube shorts or clips of me playing Galactus because I think that this is a really interesting and unique card, but I actually kind of hated the original version of this. It originally was a 6 energy 2 power with the on reveal, if this is your only card here, destroy all other locations. So it didn't have any other requirements. You could just basically land it in any lane for free unless your opponent was able to stop you through Cosmo or like sending a card over your way with like a goblin or a debris. And it was a 6-2, which felt kind of bad and it didn't really feel great. The original version was a 6-3 and then they like nerfed it to a 6-2, but it actually made you feel a little bit better because you kind of wanted like non-priority after you played it to be able to play certain cards at that time, like Shang-Chi. So it's just really weird how this original version of the card was. The deck was never super high from win rate and definitely not from cube rate because people would generally just leave. But the old versions of playing Galactus was just like playing Galactus, then you play like the original Spider-Man, which used to stop your opponent from being able to play there. You just kind of do nothing. You'd wave. You'd Spider-Man, or you'd wave, you'd Galactus a lane, and then you'd Spider-Man it there, and then you could just like clear it up on the final turn without your opponent being able to do anything. Or like you'd play it in a lane that already had a couple of big cards, and that was back when Shang-Chi could kill all the big cards, so you could like not really do anything, and then like play it out on turn 5 onto a lane that you could just Shang-Chi and blow their entire board up. Just a lot of really like toxic things would happen with this card. There's actually versions of Galactus that would play like Electro into either the original version of Dr. Octopus, which would pull all of your opponent's cards out onto the field. So you basically empty your opponent's hand before playing the Galactus and then sweep over the top with Galactus. Or you would leech your opponent's hand, which used to just like clear all of the cards of abilities, and then you'd play Galactus so they wouldn't even be able to counter it. It just led to all these really toxic play patterns. It was one of the first and one of like the really only examples of like a solitaire feeling deck. Like obviously there's interaction with what you do, but it did really feel like there's unless you put cards into your deck, it was very annoying to try and beat these really dedicated Galactus decks. But the change they made to it I thought was great. I think some people really think Galactus is still toxic. And maybe it's just the fact that I'm biased because of how toxic it used to be. But I think that this version of Galactus is so much more interesting of a card. It was originally a 6-7. It did get brought back down to a 6-6. That was after Goliath was causing a ton of problems with Galactus. But I really like this version of the card. I think that it is a huge investment card that's not quite as easy to just get over the top of. It is way easier to counter this card because all you have to do is beat the 6 power from Galactus. But there's lots of cool things you could do. You know, there's like Maverick that would buff up Galactus and you could slam him down. You can use goblins to fight for a lane. You can try and Galactus on the final turn after you completely board lock your opponent. Just really cool things that come from this card. And I really like this version of Galactus a lot more. I think it's an interesting and cool card that's in the game that is never really felt super overpowered outside of when Goliath initially came out. And just a really fun card to play. So shout out to them for making Galactus go from one of the most toxic cards in the game to only one of the top 20 most toxic cards in the game. Shout out to you. The last two we have, I think, are really cool. The first one is OG Magic. Yes, Magic used to be a 5-3. That sounds crazy, and it seems like immediate reaction is probably, oh my gosh, this card is horrendous. It's Magic, and it causes limbo, but it's on a 5-3. But you might notice with the ability, all it says is, on reveal, replace this location with limbo. That's right. In the beta, you could actually play Magic on turn 6. And it was so backbreaking to go up against a Magic player who would play it on turn 6. There was this like chicken style of like gameplay that would go on when Magic was getting really popular once people started to realize that playing it on turn 6, extending the game, having your opponent fill up lanes thinking it was the last turn, and then surprising them with an extra turn really just kind of it did not lead to very positive reactions from anyone, and everyone just really hated this card. And then, of course, they added that doesn't work after turn 5 restriction, which I think was such a smart choice. And then they brought it down to a 3/2 as well to make it a card that you can play out. I do think that Magic is a bit of a maybe like noob trap a little bit, because a lot of people just say like, oh, Magic would be good in this deck. But really, Magic is almost only good if you can really take advantage of that turn 7 more than your opponent. So like the fact that it's brought down, it's still a 3/2, so it's pretty like low value card as far as just pure power on a 3-drop. Usually, I mean, man, now that Drax is around nowadays, you're looking for like 3/7 minimum out of your 3-drops that you play out. So way, way down. So to put that investment of putting Magic in your deck and facing the risk of your opponent turning things off, you either have to have like a devastating combo that you're trying to draw into that can pretty much go over the top of everything, or be playing something like Clog that limits your opponent's board space and allows you to get over the top. So I think Magic went from this card that was like super hard to like play outside of playing it on turn 6, that would then just trick your opponent kind of into filling up lanes and then you could fight back against it, to this card that really, I think, teaches you some of the fundamental ideas of Marvel Snap as far as like how your deck works compared to your opponent and when Magic is a good inclusion. I really, really love the change to this card, and I think that it made it from a horribly toxic, weird card to a really interesting card that teaches you about the game. And last but not least, the absolute like poster child of the cards that have gotten a big glow up is, of course, OG Kang. That was originally a 5 energy, 0 power with the ability on reveal, look at what your opponent did, then restart the turn without this. Now, when people first saw this card was coming out, I think there was a bit of a split as far as what people thought. I really did not think that this card was going to be good, and I think the main reason is just because it takes up a draw from you. Like, if you draw this card and then you play it, then when you reset the turn, you just have one less card than your opponent. And that just like really doesn't feel super good. But some people really thought it was going to be powerful. It's like a Daredevil that you can play on turn 6. And would lead to really like weird situations where you'd get Kanged on turn 6. And then like, do you change your play? Do you make the same play? There was also Kang snaps was something that you would do, where on turn 6 you would snap, trying to get your opponent to retreat because you could play Kang, and then Kang would get rid of your snap that you would do and reset the turn. There was some cool things going on with Kang, whereas if it was the turn that you drew Kang and you played Kang, you would actually draw a card. So one of my original ways that I thought that Kang would be an interesting card to play would be to make him cost a lot less, to make him be like a potential draw option for decks, but not be able to play him on turn 6 to get rid of like the really toxic side of Kang, where you'd play it, you'd get to see your opponent's turn 6, and then again, you're kind of playing this chicken game of, are they going to play the same thing? Are they going to adjust it? What are they actually going to do? Sometimes like you play Kang and then like you kind of like mess yourself up because you see what your opponent's going to do, and then they play something different and then you just lose anyway. But this card was just not really good. And then not only was it not really good, but it also was causing a bunch of bugs. The dev team said multiple times that the reason that this card wasn't like higher on the list of things to get buffed or changed is because with its effect, it was just causing a lot of problems into the game, which is completely understandable. There was actually some like weird exploits that you could do with Kang early on, where like you could pretty much replay him indefinitely if you were able to like copy him onto a different card. They did get rid of that in the game, but again, it just wasn't something that was like even a good card at all, because it was just like it had terrible stats and it really just wasn't that powerful. But B, led to really toxic play patterns. And what they changed Kang to is the 3/4 game start. Replace this with 4 Kangs with text from random cards that cost 3 or more. And I love this version of Kang. I love like Cersei style, like random RNG style decks. You guys know I love Erishim. I love being able to play a game of Marvel Snap and not just have the same 12 cards that I draw every time, but actually playing with different cards and trying to like come up with new plans on the fly. And Kang is a great example of doing that in a way that doesn't feel super overpowered. I don't really think anyone hates this card going against it. Can't feel really bad when they play just like a absolutely ridiculous version of Kang out. Like if you're a destroy deck, you go against Kang, they just have a Kang Null. It's like, all right, well, I guess why did I even show up? So there is some bad sides of it, but also sometimes you play Kang and you just get really bad cards that don't actually help you out at all. You know, you can get the goblins from this, or you just send your opponent a Kang over to that side. But this is one that took a really long time for them to do, but I really think that the payoff that they did for Kang was super worth it, because this is a super unique card. Does something that really no other card does. It adds more cards to your deck to lower your consistency, but also gives you some bigger high rolls and lets you play the game in a different way. So shout out to the dev team for finally improving Kang the Conqueror, making him the beast that he deserves to be. Well, thank you so much for watching our featured section today. We also have some cool things to talk about with Marvel Snap right now, including 2 new cards that are releasing this week in Jack Flag and Starhawk. We're going to talk about Kraglin's release last week, and we're going to talk about some news and updates as well as Sanctum Showdown. Let's talk a little bit about the 2 new cards that are going out. So the Series 5 card released this week is going to be Jack Flag, the 3 energy, 3 power with ongoing. Your cards here with increased power have +2 power. I think that I fell victim to just assuming, I wouldn't say fell victim to it, but I kind of assumed when I first read this card that it meant your other cards here with increased power have +2 power, because that's usually how these cards work, but it does count itself. So I think my initial look at Jack Flag was kind of okay, but the more I look at it, man, this card is an absolute beast. You know, you throw this in a Surfer deck, you play Brood and Jack Flag in a lane. Not only are you're pretty much getting a second Surfer buff into that lane by having Jack Flag after they all get +2 power from the Surfer, adding an additional +2 on top. Really, really cool. I think that it's going to find some use in Zoo. I think that it's going to find use in Surfer, obviously. I'm also really interested to see other ways that people kind of mess around with it. I know the deck that I'm going to try with Jack Flag going to be kind of a weird version of Surfer. I'm thinking I'm going to do like a Killmonger Nova version where you're actually running the Nova and then trying to pop it with Killmonger to potentially get some Jack Flag value, as well as maybe even Blue Marvel to get some value out of this card, just on top of what Surfer is already going to do. So I'm pretty excited to mess around and try this card. I think that it's going to be very powerful. And, you know, I think that it's going to be good to get no matter what, but especially if you enjoy Surfer or Zoo, this card is definitely a card you're going to want in your collection. Moving on, we have Starhawk, which is going to be the card that you can earn through playing Sanctum Showdown. 2 energy, 2 power card with on reveal. On odd turns, give your cards at the left location +1 power. On even turns, give it to the right location. This card's interesting to me. I think that it kind of, like, these cards kind of seem like they were built in tandem with each other or to have some synergy with each other. I don't really know if you're going to be playing them together too terribly much, but this is something that's really unique. We've never really had a card that has an odd and even turn like aspect to it where it changes. I think a lot of people have like wanted to see a card where like you can get like a choice. Like people have talked about Heimdall. Like, wouldn't it be cool if Heimdall had the choice to go right or choice to go left? Maybe we'll see some functionality like that in Snap at some point. But with Starhawk, you're going to be getting to decide if it goes to the left lane or the right lane based on when you play it. Really, from a pure power perspective, even with a full lane, there's going to be a 2/6, which is decently strong, but there's a lot of investment you have to have, right? You have to play it on the right turn. You have to fill up the lane before you play it. I mean, you can like play it into that lane as well, so there's some benefit there. But I don't see this card being super, super powerful. Obviously, this is going to be a card that you can earn for free, so definitely get it into your collection. But I'm having trouble figuring out like where a suitable deck that would want a card like this would be. I would think that would be some kind of deck that would be like running things like Clea, running things like Sebastian Shaw, that likes to get small little power improvements, because you're going to multiply that by either with Clea getting that powerful spell or with Sebastian Shaw getting additional power added on top. Maybe there's some kind of like Clea, Starhawk, Shaw, maybe run like the new Shang that is really bad because it costs you a draw, but maybe just because it has synergy with it, you want to mess with it. I'm not really sure. I don't think that this card is going to have a huge meta impact. Make sure that you play Sanctum Showdown to get access to it either way, because having more cards in your collection is always good. Moving on to the last week, we had Kraglin come out. Kraglin is the 3 energy 3 power card with on reveal, banish the top card of your deck, who is 4 cost or higher, +2 energy next turn. Otherwise, give this +4 power. I really think that this card flopped. I think that a lot of people were trying to build it into ramp decks, but then still playing like 4 cards that were 3 or less power on top of that, so that like very often you're just hitting it with +4 power. When I built my deck, it was pretty much just this card and wave that, you know, it could potentially hit, but it was really always trying to get that +2 energy. That might be the better way to play it, but I don't think either way felt really good, because it's such a big deck restriction to be able to do that. And you really want this to give you +2 energy, I think, most of the time. Like getting a 3/7 is really not that great overall, and getting the +2 energy is usually what you're going to want to use for it. I think that this card could pretty easily get changed by just adding 1 power to it. I think that if this was a 3/4, then maybe like the upside of getting a 3/8 could overcome the fact that you know, you could kind of be okay with getting +2 energy or getting +4 power. Like maybe in a Surfer deck where you're running things like Sarah and Gwenpool and Galacta, you don't mind running this card to sometimes just give you a 3/8, which isn't too terrible in a Surfer deck. Or sometimes, you know, you play this on 3, you hit one of those 4 cost cards, and you could play 2 3 costs on turn 4. So pretty interesting. I do think that this card is going to need a power buff to really be able to do anything super impactful. I do think that this card will get buffed eventually. Might that be soon? Might it be later? I'm not exactly sure, but I would really like to see a just small improvement to this card, because right now the juice just isn't worth the squeeze. Like to get the +2 energy is really powerful. However, like the deck building restriction that you have to do to get it is so rough, and then if you whiff on it because you're not going that far in the deck building restriction, then you're just playing like a 3/7 in a deck that's trying to ramp energy, and it just it just feels kind of bad. So I'd love to see this card get 1 extra power. I think the card actually becomes quite impactful and quite interesting at a 3/4. So hopefully that is the move. Finally, the last thing we want to talk about today is Sanctum Showdown, which is going to be from February 26th to March 4th. I tell you what, I really love Sanctum Showdown. I'm not the biggest fan of limited time modes. I think that they're okay. I generally like playing them off stream. Like usually when they drop, I'll play them on stream a little bit, but playing them off stream is really where I get the most enjoyment out of them personally, because it's something where, you know, you're not on ladder, so there's really not as high of stakes, and you can just kind of like play them out and have some fun as you're sitting down on the couch watching a movie. However, like when you're trying to really intentively play Snap, I don't really enjoy it as much as the main version of the game. But Sanctum Showdown is one of those versions that it really changes how you play. Like it's a completely different game that uses all the same rules as Marvel Snap, but like the win condition is different, and it truly feels like something different. I know that like Jeff Hoagland has talked about like wanting to have like a Sanctum Showdown tournament at some point, so maybe like something like that could be really really cool to try and play Sanctum in a different way, or have like be able to challenge someone to Sanctum Showdown. I think could be like a really interesting thing that they could potentially add into the game at some point, like through just like a friendly challenge to make something like that happen, because Sanctum Showdown, as opposed to like Deadpool's Diner, which is just like Marvel Snap, but like escalated on the gambling side way higher, or High Voltage, which is just Marvel Snap, but like going really fast, or like Grand Arena, which is just Marvel Snap, but you get an extra energy and some unique cards. Sanctum Showdown is truly a different feeling game. So you don't really mess around with Sanctum Showdown, I would super encourage you to give it a try and really try and like learn how the game is different, and try and, you know, develop and find different decks that are cool. I think that a lot of times people will just kind of like look up a good deck and try it, especially for a mode like this, because it's way easier to do that, especially when it's something you're not super used to, as opposed to ladder. Maybe you've been playing for a really long time, so you kind of know what you like and you don't like. But trying to be inventive and creative in Sanctum Showdown, I think, is a lot of fun, and I'm really, really excited to jump into Sanctum Showdown starting on February 26th, where you can get Starhawk for free. Thank you so much for watching Bynx Bants. As always, I always appreciate the support on this series that I do. Really love sitting around talking about Marvel Snap and doing this research to find really cool and interesting changes that have happened in Marvel Snap, and I hope that you appreciate it as well. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. Make sure to comment. Let me know. A big thing actually that I did want to say is with comments, I am building a list now of ideas for these Bynx Bants. And actually, I have like a growing list going. This was one of the suggestions from someone on stream, actually. So if you have an idea for Bynx Bants, I would love to hear it. I will try and look at them and talk to people in the comments as I always do. But do you hear that? He's getting me out of here. It's the freaking song. Like and subscribe. We'll see you in the next one. See ya. Bynx.